Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Great to see everybody here. We're going to start off. I want to encourage you to open up a prayer book and a song sheet. Prayer book, Mishkan Tefillah, is on our website. Open that up so that you can follow along with the prayers and the songs. I'm going to do one song on the song sheet as well. So that song sheet is right underneath the prayer book on our website. Let's begin on page 74, Matovu. Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Oh yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael Yai lai 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 Yai lai 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 Vani berov chastecha avo vetecha Yai lai 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 Yai lai lai Yai lai 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 Page 77. Blessed are you, Adonai, sovereign of the universe. With divine wisdom you have made our bodies, combining veins, arteries, and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous maker and sustainer of life, were one of them to fail, how well we are aware, we would lack the strength to stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. Baruch atah Adonai, rofei chol basar, umafli la'asot. Let me just check to see if I need to fix something here. Okay. No. Doing the best we can on the sound here, and yeah. Hope we can figure that out. Page 78. The wonders of broadcast worship. What did they do in the temple in Jerusalem? I don't know. Page 78. Elohai nishama shenatatavi tehorahi tehorahi Elohai nishama shenatatavi The soul is pure, God has given me Elohai nishama shenatatavi tehorahi tehorahi Elohai Ta.
Rabbi, you're on mute.
Ata yitzarta. Ata nefachta bi. Ve'ata mishamra b'kirbi. Whoa, Elohai neshama shenatata bi. Tehorahi, Tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi. The soul is pure, God has given me. The soul is pure, God has given me. The soul is pure, God has given me. Okay, page 83. Janet, you get to take over here.
As I awaken, let this be my thought. May my day be filled with acts of loving kindness. Let me be drawn to learning and discernment, and may my actions be shaped by mitzvot. Keep me from iniquity, disgrace, and sin. May I not be overwhelmed by temptation or despair. Distance me from evil people and false friends. Let me cultivate a life of goodness. May my hands reach out in kindness, and I will serve God through acts of righteousness. Today and every day, may I merit your mercy by living my life with compassion and love. Holy One of blessings, draw me to your words. Teach me the art of sacred living. Baruch atah Adonai, hamlamed chasadim tovim la'amo Yisrael.
Page 96, we continue on page 96 with Psalm 92. That's the psalm that gets added to the morning warm-up section of the service on Shabbat. Mizmor shir leyom ha-Shabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai. Mizmor shir leyom ha-Shabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai. Uzamer l'shimcha elyon, Uzamer l'shimcha elyon. Lehagid baboker chasdecha ve'emunatecha ba'leilot. Sadik katamar yifrach, ke'erez balvanon yizkeh. Shetulim beveit Adonai, vechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu. Od yenuvun b'seva, tishenim verananim yehiyu. Lehagid ki yashar Adonai, Suri velo avlatabo. Page 102. Even if our mouths were full of song as the sea, and our tongues full of joy in countless waves, and our lips full of praise as wide as the sky's expanse, and were our eyes to shine like sun and moon, if our hands were spread out like heaven's eagles, and our feet swift like young deer, we could never thank you adequately, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, to bless your name for a 10,000th of the many myriads of times you granted favors to our ancestors and to us. Page 106. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'alma divrach yirutei, v'amlich malchutei, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו Amen. I invite you to rise for Baruch. There we go. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Baruch hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach leolam. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai. You may be seated. Let's continue on page 110. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh bechol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam bechochma asita, mal'ah ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, Va'al me'orei or she'asita yefarucha sela. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu mehera le'oro, Baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. A while back, I think back in November, I explained a little bit about Ahava Rabbah and its the paragraph in the middle of page 112, which includes the words, V'havienu l'shalom me'arba kanfot ha'aretz. Bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth. It's customary to take the tzitzit of your talit and bring them together from the four corners in our wish that we be brought together in peace. So when we get to that point in the prayer, then we pull the tzitzit together and hold them all the way through the Shema. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai, our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah, focus our minds on your mitzvot, unite our hearts in love and reverence for your name. Then we will never feel shame, never deserve rebuke, and never stumble. Having trusted in your great and awesome holiness, we shall celebrate your salvation with joy. Gather us in peace from the four corners of the earth, and lead us upright to our land. For you, O God, work wonders. You chose us. Truly, you drew us near to your great name, that we might acknowledge you, declaring you one in love. Praise be you, Adonai, who chooses your people Israel in love. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Beth Wilson is going to lead us on page 114.
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Amen. Page 117. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when, to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives, and we can begin to change the world. And then you live in our hearts, and we, through righteousness, behold your presence. Page 122. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, norat tehilot osef elem, norat tehilot osef elem. Shir achadasha shivchu geulim, לשמחה שפתיים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם לעולם ועד. Lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 lai. Yai lai 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 yai lai 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 lai. Susie Mosca is going to lead us in the tefillah. Please turn to page 124. I invite you to rise.
Adonai sivatai tiftach uviati Tehillattecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. El Hagadol, Hagibur v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, Umei Kula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo B'Ahava, Melech Ozer U'Mashiach U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Bezrat Sarah. Atah Gibur Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol Atah Rav LaHoshia. Mashiach Baruch, Umorid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayei HaKol B'Rakamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Norafei Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umakayem emunato lishene afar michamocha ba'geverot umido melach melech memid umachayeh umatzmiach Yeshua v'ne'eman ata lahachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai machayeh hakol.
You may be seated. We're going to continue with an English setting of Kedusha that's on the song sheet. So I invite you to open up the song sheet to page 5. We are gifts and we are blessings. We are history in song. We are hope and we are healing. We are learning to be strong. We are words and we are stories. We are pictures of the past. We are carriers of wisdom, not the first and not the last. Dor vador, nagid god lecha. The dor vador, we protect this chain. From generation to generation, the dor vador, these lips will praise your name. Looking back on the journey that we carry in our heart, from the shadow of the mountain to the waters that would part, we are blessed and we are holy. We are children of your way. And the words that bring us meaning, we will have the strength to say. The dor vador, nagid god lecha. The dor vador, we protect this chain. From generation to generation, the dor vador, these lips will praise your name. Page 135. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories, glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace, born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 137. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'odcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. Let's continue with Sim Shalom on page 140.
Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim V'Rachamim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Ve'al Kol Yisrael Amecha, Barcheinu Yotzreinu Kulanu Ke'echad, Ve'or Panecha, Ki ve'or Panecha Natata Lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim V'Rachamim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael Amecha, Torah Chaim Ve'ahavat Chesed, U'Tzedaka Uvracha Ve'Rachamim Ve'Chaim Ve'Shalom, Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim V'Rachamim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael Amecha, Tov Ve'einecha Levarech Et Amcha Yisrael Bechol Eit Uvechol Shah Bishlomecha. Sim Shalom, Tova Uvracha, Chen V'Chesed V'Rachamim V'Rachamim Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael Amecha. You could find words for silent prayer on pages 142 and 143. Yehu leratzon imre fi v'hegyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri v'goali Adonai tzuri v'goali.
We're going to continue now with the service for the reading of the Torah. We're going to take the Torah out and do Torah reading, some Haftarah, and then have a conversation about this morning's Torah portion. So for Torah reading, I invite you to open up your prayer book to page 246 and sing along with me.
Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udevar Adonai Mirushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah,
Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'Kedushato. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo. Gadlu Adonai iti, unerom ema Shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai hagedula, v'hagivora, v'hatiferet, v'netzach v'hahod. Ki chol bashamayim uvaretz, ki chol bashamayim uvaretz. Lecha Adonai hamamlacha, ve'amit nahaseh lechol erosh. You may be seated. We are reading this morning from Parshat Vayechi. This is the last Torah portion in the book of Genesis. And although it's not a long Torah portion, I chose to read the final verses of the book of Genesis because it gives me the opportunity to sing a special melody as well as giving you the opportunity to recite, to participate in a custom for the conclusion of a book of the Torah. When you get to the end of any of the 5 books of the Torah, it's the reader, the person chanting the Torah, shifts into a special melody that is sung only for the final words of each book of the Torah. And then the congregation responds by saying, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and let us be strengthened by one another. So let me see if I can get that melody in my head so I could sing it to you and you can learn it. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. By the way, you music mavens, this is interesting because it's modal. It's not precisely major key, it's a mode. I can't tell you what mode it is, but it is modal. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. I'm going to do it one more time. Chazak, chazak, v'nit chazek. So when I get to the end of the reading, you'll hear me shift into a kind of different melody, and then you recite that for the conclusion of the reading. So where we are, it's Genesis chapter 50. And I'm going to begin in verse 23. Now, I believe we have a slide. I don't know if are we able to pull up the slide for this? We're going to try to pull up the slide. You won't see me read, you'll hear me, but you'll be able to follow along with the text. If you happen to have the Plowed Torah commentary, that's this book. It's on page 316?
Yes.
Great. And afterwards, after the Haftarah, we'll then discuss these final verses of the Torah reading. Where, spoiler alert, Joseph is going, the son of Jacob and Rachel, Joseph's going to die. So that's the end of the book. Here goes. What do you think? Are we able to get it?
Yeah, but you want to show it after the blessings?
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, let me find my place here. Hey, Janet, do you want a gabbai? Okay. Yep. Just keep your eye on this page right here. There we go. Okay. And our blessings are going to be recited. Oops, pardon me. I need to see this. Yeah. Our Torah blessings will be recited this morning by Beth Wilson. Ta'amod Batya Bat Avraham V'Sarah.
Baruchu et Adonai Hamavorach.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Amen. Vayar Yosef le'Ephraim b'nei Shleshim gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe yuledu al birchei Yosef. Vayomer Yosef el Echav Anochi met ve'Elohim pakod yivkod etchem ve'ha'ela etchem min haaretz hazot el haaretz asher nishba la'Avraham li'Yitzchak li'Yaakov. Vayashba Yosef et bnei Yisrael lemor pakod yivkod Elohim etchem v'ha'alitem et atzmotahai mizeh. Vayamot Yosef ben me'ah v'eser shanim vayachantuhu oto vayisem ba'aron b'mitzrayim chazak chazak v'nit chazek. Beth, will you do the closing blessing?
Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah temet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Because we'll actually no, I'm going to do Hag Baha first, and then we'll cover them. So I'm going to lift the Torah so you can see what I just read. We stand when the Torah stands up, and then we'll go on with Haftarah. V'zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Ivdu avdei Adonai. Hallelujah, hallelujah, avdei Adonai. Yeah, we'll put the crowns on afterwards. Yeah. We're going to continue now with the Haftarah. Now, there it is. This Haftarah comes from 1 Kings, and 1 Kings opens up essentially with the death of David. So it's King David. It's an interesting connection. What the rabbis did is they said, well, Genesis ends with the death of Joseph. We'll find a passage in the prophets that also signifies the death of a major leader of the Jewish people. So they select the opening of 1 Kings, actually chapter 2, where David is speaking to his son Solomon about being his successor and about replicating essentially the final words of Joseph. Joseph speaking to his brothers about taking care of him after, or making sure to take care of his remains after he dies. So if you want to follow along, it's in 1 Kings chapter 2, beginning in verse 1. And Plowed Commentary,
323.
page 323. And I do believe I have a slide for this one as well. Should be second page of that. There we go. First Kings chapter 2, verse 1. Just going to read a small selection here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav divreihem הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה, אדוני, הבוחר בתורה, ובמשה עבדו, ובישראל עמו, ובנביאי האמת והצדק. ויקרבו ימי דוד למות, ויצב את שלמה בנו לאמור. אנוכי הולך בדרך כל הארץ, וחזקת והיית לאיש, ושמרת את משמרת אדוני אלוהיך, ללכת בדרכיו, לשמור חוקותיו, מצוותיו, ומשפטיו ועדותיו, ככתוב בתורת משה, למען תשכיל את כל אשר תעשה, ואת כל אשר תפנה שם, למען יקים אדוני את דברו, אשר דיבר עלי לאמור, אם ישמרו בניך את דרכם, ללכת לפני באמת בכל לבבם ובכל נפשם, לאמור, לא יכרת לך איש מעל כיסא ישראל. And if you like that melody, you can learn to chant Haftorah Trope starting on next Sunday, a week from this Sunday, in my Haftorah Trope class. Sign up now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzor kol haolamim, tzadik bechol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer v'oseh, ha'medaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al hanvi'im ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu liktushav limnucha lechavod ultifaret. Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu nachlu modim lach u'mevarchim otach yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh ha'shabbat. Amen. Well, we're going to talk about this Torah reading now, and I'm going to relocate into the lobby so I can carry on a conversation with you, see you and hear you, which I can't exactly do from this spot. So give me one moment. And while we're doing that, why don't we put the slide up for the Torah reading so people can see that text. Okay. Unmute. There we go. Thank you. Nice. Cool. Okay. You're going to sit with me? Okay. Yeah. Look, so that we can better discuss this and not have to have, I'm gonna get another piece of paper here. Let's have somebody read the translation out loud. That will help everybody focus on what the text says and enable us to discuss. Then we'll take the text off so we can see one another. Susie, I see you on screen. Would you like to do the reading out loud?
Yes. Joseph saw Ephraim's grandchildren, the children of Machir too. Manasseh's son were born on Joseph's knees. Joseph then said to his kin, I am dying, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up out of this land, into the land that God promised to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Joseph adjured Israel's children, saying, God will surely take care of you. Bring my bones up from this place. Joseph died aged 110 years. They embalmed him, and he was put into a coffin in Egypt.
And there we have the conclusion of the book of Genesis. So back to, let's see, I want to get myself into gallery view so that I can see everybody. There we go. All right.
If you click here, you can get
So good to see your faces. It's not something that I could see while I'm leading the service in the sanctuary. There's an awful lot of interesting expressions in this portion. Let's start with the expression that Joseph was able to see Ephraim's grandchildren and the children of Machir, Manasseh's son. That means he's able to see Manasseh's grandchildren born on Joseph's knees. What's the point of saying this? Does this mean that Joseph was a midwife? What do you think it means? Anybody want to offer an opinion? Sandy, go ahead.
I think it refers to adoption. They weren't his actual children.
So he adopts either the children or more likely his grandchildren. He adopts. Now notice what it says. He sees the birth of his great-grandchildren. That's what's going on. Joseph's sons are Ephraim and Manasseh. So if he sees the grandchildren of Ephraim, that's his great-grandchildren. If he sees the children of Machir, Machir is Manasseh's son, so Machir is Joseph's grandson. So if he sees the children of Machir, he sees his great-grandchildren through both of his children, Ephraim and Manasseh. Sandy's offering the opinion of many scholars who believe that placing the children on your knees symbolizes adopting them as your own. So adoption doesn't mean that the parents don't still raise the children. It means that their status in the family is raised up one generation. It's elevated by one generation. And we can already see this in the case of Ephraim and Manasseh. Think about the 12 tribes. Who are the 12 tribes? They're presumably the sons of Jacob. Right? Jacob has 12 sons. The 12 tribes are the 12 sons of Jacob. Except that two of them aren't Jacob's sons. Ephraim and Manasseh are two of the 12 tribes. Who are they? They're Jacob's grandsons. They're the sons of Joseph. Jacob adopted Ephraim and Manasseh, placing them on his knees as if he was their father. It doesn't mean that he actually becomes their father and raises them. What it means is they got elevated in status to be co-equal with Jacob's other sons. Now we find out that Machir, the children of Machir are born on Joseph's knees, and maybe that Machir himself, the grandson of Joseph, is raised up to the status of a tribe. Not necessarily Machir's children, but we know this about Machir because there's one place in the book of Judges where Machir is listed as one of the 12 tribes. So what we think of as the 12 tribes, the sons of Jacob, not really. These were collections of tribes, and their story is told as if they were somehow the children or grandchildren of Jacob, and their status kept shifting depending upon which story in the Bible we're reading, whether they're raised up to the status of tribe or not. Okay, let's go on. Where Joseph says, Joseph then said to his kin, "I am dying." It's interesting. He's making a speech, a deathbed speech. What's interesting about it is the previous chapter in the book of Genesis is about Jacob dying. Now, Genesis is 50 chapters long. That's how long the book is. In the 49th chapter, Jacob dies. In the 50th chapter, Joseph dies. What's happening to the pace of the story as we get towards the end of the book?
what's going on here?
They're concluding. They're bringing all the stories to an end.
They're wrapping up loose ends.
The end of the season. We got to be ready for next year's TV season.
Therefore, that's exactly it. Thank you, Sharon. It's the end of the TV season. What's the next season going to be about? What's the next book going to be about?
Their children.
It's Exodus.
It's Exodus. Thank you, Trish. It's Exodus.
They're
going to leap. They're going to leap ahead, almost like a reboot. They are going to an entirely new storyline that has almost nothing to do with the patriarchs. The patriarchs are virtually absent from the rest of the Torah. The whole story about the family and the 3 generations and Joseph and his brothers and all, it's old history. Once we hit the book of Exodus, it's all Moses and the Israelites and the emergence of the nation of Israel, which relegates Genesis to essentially being the backstory. Genesis is the backstory to the real story of the Torah, which is the emergence of the nation of Israel. Think of it as Genesis is to the rest of the Torah what The Hobbit is to the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, you kind of need The Hobbit, but it's really just the backstory to Lord of the Rings. Genesis gives us the family origin, but it's all set up. So it's not that they have to go on for a long time about Jacob and Joseph. No, they need to wrap it up and get us to where we need to be in the story, which is in Egypt. Genesis ends in Egypt. That gets us to where we need to be for the beginning of Exodus.
Rabbi, does the fact that he elevates the great-grandchildren ensure their sort of starring roles or their position in the next stories? Or, if they weren't elevated, would they be, in the minor cast?
It's not in the next stories. I think it's a reflection of the history of writing the story, that the story is written at a time when the tribe of Machir had a significant standing. And later on in our history, their standing is lessened and they're no longer considered a tribe. So it reflects a very early stage of the writing of our story when Machir still had some significance. It's interesting. Go ahead.
I had not noticed this before, but it says that where it says that Joseph says to his brothers, Joseph is the young. Joseph, and then there's that. Okay, so you see where I'm going. It's like,
go ahead, play it out for us. What's the issue?
So he's young. His brothers are still alive. He's dying. What's going on here?
Joseph is the 11th of 12 sons, right? The youngest son is Benjamin. Yeah. He's the 11th. His brothers are all, with the exception of Benjamin, all of his brothers are older than him. All of them. And he says to his brothers, it sounds as if they're all alive.
But that's why it's translated not as brothers, but to his kin.
That was my question.
So maybe, it says in the Hebrew his brothers. Maybe it doesn't really mean literally his brothers, or maybe the storyteller really is unconcerned with this problem of age.
Well,
it just ignores it.
There's another problem, or not a problem, but another question around that, which is previously with Jacob, his brothers are like, okay, our father's dead. You're going to come now and, beat up on us because you just were being nice because of our dad's around. So I'm not convinced it's just a phrase. On the other hand, I am very puzzled by how the ages are being thought about.
Yeah, the whole age thing just doesn't work out. But Trish, I agree with you. It's his brothers, because we just had the storyline right after, in the previous chapter, right after Jacob dies, his brothers come to him and say, hey, are you going to even up the score now that dad's not around? And he says, no, this was all God's doing. What I'm interested in is the way that the two of them die. Jacob says when he dies in the previous chapter, I am about to be gathered to my kin. And he makes sure that Joseph takes responsibility for gathering him to his kin. How is Jacob going to be gathered to his kin? Physically, what's going to happen to enable that to take place? Where is he going? Anybody? They're in Egypt. Where is he going to be buried?
Gathered to
Sandy?
the kin, though.
Canaan.
Go ahead, Judith. Go ahead.
Gathered to the kin, though, is a general term they use in the Torah for everything, because they use that for Moses' death as well.
They do. It generally, it's both a general term, but it also can have a specific reference. It can actually have a very physical reference too, about their style of burial. But what does Jacob want them to do? He makes them swear what?
To take them to the promised land.
Take him back to the family plot. And where is the family plot located?
Queens, New York.
With the rest of them.
The cave of
All right.
Machpelah.
Is it Chicago and no?
Where
Canaan, the land, the promised land.
Abraham's purchase of the cave of
That's it.
Machpelah.
Thank you, Judith. It's in Hebron. Today they say Hebron. Hebron. Really one of the most significant Jewish cities in Israel. But it's a West Bank city now. Hebron is one of the most ancient sites of all the sites mentioned in the Torah for the Jewish people. This is
older than Jericho?
I don't know actually if it's older, but
Oh,
it's
oh,
where
you mean
it's
for
where
us.
for the storyline is that this is where Abraham buys a plot to bury Sarah, and it becomes the family plot. And Isaac and Rebecca are buried there, and Jacob and Leah are buried there. Not Rachel;
No.
she's buried up in Bethlehem. So
Rabbi.
Jacob says, "Take me home. I don't want to be buried here. Take me back to the family plot." Now we're going to come back to Joseph in a moment. Yeah, who was about to say?
So,
Sharon,
so
was
the
that you?
fact that Joseph dies now, one chapter after Jacob, is that saying that Joseph's final responsibility, once he carried out or made sure the promise was carried out, or the promise of bringing his father or his father's death concludes Joseph's formal responsibilities?
Not exactly. We see, if we had read back earlier in the chapter, remember I said I was just reading the last few verses of the parashah. Joseph goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let me go bury my father back in the homeland." And Pharaoh says, "Okay, you could go." He comes back and he picks up the job. He's still got to there, even though it seems like the next thing that happens is he dies. We're collapsing time here. They're just running through. The rest of the stuff isn't important. It was all about his job. And now when it comes time for him to die, he says something not identical, but remarkably similar to what his father says. He says, God will remember. God will take note of you. And when God does, bring my bones up from this place. Up from this place. What is Joseph asking his brothers to be responsible for?
Bring him to the family plot.
Right. Why is this? What's the big deal? What is Joseph saying about himself?
His identity is not Egyptian.
Said he has not forgotten who he is. And he is the second most powerful person in Egypt.
But it's ironic because they embalm him.
They embalm him.
Like an Egyptian.
But they also embalm Jacob.
Oh, they do? For the journey, because otherwise they wouldn't make it.
So the body makes it so we can actually have something to bury in the family plot, because if they didn't embalm him in that period, I mean, it wasn't like they put him on a train and it was going to be a few extra days. That was probably months to get him to the promised land, right?
So you're suggesting there are practical reasons, but I think that ignores that it is an Egyptian tradition. There's nothing in the Bible about embalming. That's what Egyptians did. It's not what our ancestors did. You're correct that there's a practical reason if they're going to transport him back to the family plot. I'm looking at it as it's a statement of identity. Yeah, he's so Egyptian. He's entirely Egyptian in everything. And when it comes to time for him to die, he says, you know what? Really, I'm a Jew. I mean, let's remember. Put me in the family plot. Judith, go ahead.
So it's really interesting because they get the dichotomy. A commoner was not embalmed in Egypt. Slaves for sure not. Commoners rarely. Priests and nobility, yes. So they're giving him the status of the nobility, even though his status is not free. He has to ask Pharaoh to take his father. He has to ask Pharaoh. He's still maintaining that slave status. So it's an interesting dichotomy, how they're treating Jacob and how they treated Joseph.
They treat them with great honor. That they are upper class in Egypt, even though they're foreigners. It's interesting about the embalming. I looked up a little bit on this. It turns out, Judith said it's a really good point that if you were a commoner, you weren't embalmed, but there were different levels of embalming. There is the, go all out and become a mummy, and that's like, high end, with the sarcophagus and everything and the painted eyes and all. But then there's there were inexpensive versions too. You couldn't afford to go all out, but you could do an inexpensive ramp. And that might be what the middle class did, as if there was a middle class. But you understand what I mean. There's, it's not like you had to be in the elite. You just had to be somebody of substance to be able to be embalmed. Well, what strikes me is this deep, like, Joseph makes them swear, don't leave me here. And what's more is he knows it may not happen for a long time because he says, one day God will remember you. God's going to remember. When that time comes, make sure you tell your descendants, however long it's going to be, generations, just make sure you tell them, don't leave me here. I want to go home. This is the rosebud moment for Joseph.
Nice.
He's remembering where he came from. It's really poignant, right? It's touching that deep inside of him, he sees himself as somebody other than whom everybody else sees him as, the consummate Egyptian. And so, the words God will remember are repeated almost verbatim. When Moses comes back to the elders of Israel in the book of Exodus and says to them, God has remembered.
I didn't see it.
It's God will surely take care of you.
Yeah.
And it's pakod. Yeah, it's pakod yifkod. It's similar to Zachor, but it's like a loyalty.
But isn't it from the same word as fear?
No.
Okay.
No, that's pachad.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds like, with a chaf.
With a chaf instead of a kuf, got it.
No, a chet instead of a kuf, yeah. So then where does the book end? What's the last word in the book of Genesis?
Egypt.
Egypt.
Yeah.
That's a very dark place to end the book, don't you think? This is a book about the origins of the Jewish people. And where does it end? It's a cliffhanger. They ended the book on a cliffhanger. So you go, oh my gosh, they're in Egypt? How are they going to get out of Egypt?
It makes everybody tune in next season, Rabbi. Come on.
That's
Who shot
it.
JR?
What's that?
Who shot JR?
Who shot JR? Yeah, you have
Waiting
to
for
come
something.
back. It's like the whole book is written as a setup so that we will be able to pick up with the real action, which is Moses. And then you get this dramatic powerhouse story of the battle between Moses representing God and Pharaoh that occupies the first 19 chapters, the first half of the book of Exodus. And there we're going to stop. It's a really powerful, emotional ending to the book of Genesis that gets us ready for this national sweep, this arc of the history of the nation of Israel. Okay.
It's interesting that it always falls at this time of year where we're in our new year, and we are sort of always in a now we start our new year. This
yeah.
it aligns with our secular calendar quite
Yeah.
interestingly.
It does
In the
have.
rabbinic layout of the reading of the story, it's a wintertime story. Janet points out that the word for they put him in a coffin is aron. Now, some of you will recognize the word. What does aron mean? You could see one in one of the screens that we're looking at.
Yeah, it's an ark.
Ark. It's the holy.
Aron, oh yes, and behind Sharon also. Aron is the word for an ark. This is the only place. Aron HaKodesh, the holy ark. This is not, by the way, Noah's ark, which is an entirely different word. That's teva. This is the only place in the Torah where Aron is used in the sense of coffin. The word essentially means cabinet, a container. Elsewhere, there is another word for coffin. I don't remember what it is. This is the only place where it's used to suggest a coffin. Notice that it's used for the burial of somebody who is holy. Otherwise, the Torah uses a different word for coffin. Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I?
So, go ahead,
have
Trish.
Sorry, but Judith said something that I wanted to pick up on around Joseph still being a slave, and I'm not sure that's right in the sense that he was still owned by any more than any other Egyptian was. Pharaoh was a god. And so everybody would have had any functionary would have had to ask permission, number one. And number two, I think we have a second, not contradiction, but discussion between Joseph and Joseph about whose God is he? He has to reconcile his God and Pharaoh is God. And that's part of what's going on here as we're going. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's a tension.
Yeah. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think that's actually an interesting, picking up on that going forward, that really is another way to lead us into the next book.
So as we head out of this, I just want to comment on Danny Spurt's background screen. We're going home and we're going to call our son to interpret the mathematical formula and understand what it's. I see what you wrote, and it was delicious. So we're going to go figure out after.
Ask him what it means.
No. We'll figure it out after the service. We will come up with the meaning here. Okay, I'm going to relocate back into the sanctuary, and we will conclude the service there. Okay.
Running rabbis. He comes off of one screen and he's almost there.
In the meantime, maybe Danny could tell us what his screen means.
Okay. We're going to return the Torah to the Ark. And I invite you to turn to page 256. We will stand and remain standing through the end of the service. Page 256. Okay. Eitz Chaim hi lamachazikim ba v'tom cheha meushar teracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Page 282. We're going to recite the Aleinu at the bottom of the page. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam. V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. Page 280, page 285. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. Page 287. V'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Page 295. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have drawn into our hearts with our own. Zichronam livracha, may their memories be for blessing. Mourner's Kaddish, page 294. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayed achol Beit Yisrael ba'agala u'vizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mivarach le'olam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechmata. Da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring peace to us, to all Israel and all the world, to which we say, amen. You may be seated. Let's do some announcements before our closing song. Susie?
Shabbat Shalom. I'm Susie Maska, Religious Practices Chair. I hope you all had an enjoyable, safe winter break. Thank you, Rabbi Milder, for leading us in worship, and thank you to our participants in this morning's service. If you're interested in participating in a future service, please contact Rabbi Milder. Preschool resumes on Monday. Religious school starts a week from Sunday, January 10th. That's also the first day of early childhood Shirah at 10 families with babies through Pre-K are welcome to join Rabbi Milder and the K2s online for Shirah. Then the baby toddler group will break off for playgroup. Contact the Early Childhood Committee for details. January 10th is also the start for the adult education course. The winter course is Learn to Chant Haftarah, taught by Rabbi Milder. Learn to chant the beautiful melodies used to chant from the prophets. January 10th at 7 p.m., there is the first class for our next teen program, CBEAT. That's C-B-E-T-E. This winter, the topics are, what do Jews believe? Please encourage your teen participation. Then we have a number of other upcoming activities. Starting Tuesday, in coordination with Under One Tent and the CCJCC, there will be a series of online movies and discussions on Zoom centered around social justice and the civil rights movement and how the Jews over the years have been involved. Wednesday evening, there will be a religion chat with Interfaith Interconnect. And then one can also look at the Once Around for other events coming up. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Let's conclude this morning with Yigdal on page 324. Yigdal Elohim Chai v'yishtabach nimtza ve'ein eid el mitziuto echad ve'ein yachid keyichudo nelam v'gam etzo le'achduto ein lo demut haguf ve'eino guf lo naroch elav kedushato kadmon lechol davar asher nivra rishon ve'ein reshit lereshito hino adon olam lechol notzar yoreg dulato malchuto shefa nevuato nitano elahanche segulato v'tifarto lo kam b'Yisrael kemo sheod navi u'mahabit et tmunato torat emet natan le'amoel al yad nevi'o ne'eman deto lo yachalif ha'el velo yamir dato leolamim lezulato sofev yodea sitarenu mabit besof davar bekadmato gomer leish chesed kemihivalo noten rashara gerishato yishlach leketz yamin pedut olam kochai v'yeshakir yeshuato chaye olam nata betochenu baruch adei shem tehilato chaye olam nata betochenu baruch adei shem tehilato. Shabbat Shalom. Have a good week. See you soon.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
Well, say that again.
Shabbat Shalom.
Danny, I won't be able to hear you at the moment, but the meaning is, Janet's going to read it to me, I think.
Oh, I ate some pie.
Ate some pie.
I ate some pie, and it was delicious. You know what? If I had asked my son to interpret it, yeah. If I had asked my son to interpret it, he would have been like perplexed, like what? It's just a formula. Well, thanks everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.